All right, so can everyone see? It looks like a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, so this is planted in Miro right now. I've uploaded it to Blackboard already. It's also in week 3 on our Teams files folder. So 3 different locations to find this. Perhaps the one you want to pay attention to is in Teams. There's a live Excel document of this. There's some formulas embedded, primarily to kind of keep the information consistent. So I'd say before we go into specifics of this and the deliverable, we're gonna take a step back and use your project from 302 to do a quick data gathering on that project. And the cells highlighted in green are the only cells we'd like you to populate. It's also the goal of this will be that we would be able to compare the projects not just architecturally and formally, but on a data level, and don't view this as a kind of necessarily as a competition, see which project can outperform the other. It's more that I think it introduces topics that I think we'd like to cover with you guys. And that is, we can look at architecture as an agent for how to make a city, but we can also use data to kind of confirm certain things or argue for. So view it as such. So sheet number 1, that's project 5A right here, is asking you to do a collection of information and keep it in this format, asking you to add a rendering down here of, let's say, the final submittal from 302. I think it's sort of, I think the axos that we've produced all quarter, right? Like you'll be able to kind of get a nice render in here. You have, I think this is roughly an 8.5 by 11, right? If this is a vertical 11 by 17, okay. I got the fat Sharpie today. So go into specifics, and this is in reference to OJ's presentation in, I think it's chapter 13. You're going to find, or 14, right? Parking.
Yeah, 14.
Oh yeah, here it is. Yeah, I even put it in here, right? So it's a reference to the municipal code. The way every piece of information is organized is by chapter, the article, the division, and the page number, right? So this is a way of keeping track of where you are in this legal document. Just you included it as a graphic reference to know where you are. So yeah, chapter 14 is where you find parking, right? So there's a couple topics here: unit types as it relates to parking requirements, project square footage, the building as a kind of rough idea about the building, and then the metric of percentages. So I'm going to go one by one through here. I'm borrowing within the unit type, I'm borrowing the language of the San Diego Municipal Code. They define a studio up to 400 square feet, has certain designations. A 1-bedroom or a studio over 400 square feet has a different designation. So they make classifications in that. There's a 2-bedroom. Notice like density is also, you can reduce it to the amount of bedrooms technically. and the 5+ bedrooms. So these are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 unit or unit types. So I've populated this with sort of a series of random numbers. I'm said I have studios under 400 square feet, about 27 of it. I have 10 one-bedrooms, 2, 7, 8, and so forth, for a total of 72 units. So again, this is red. It tabulates this right into this. So all green is all for you to enter. The other part that we're trying to link here is how the unit or the amount of units is related to parking requirements. On a more cynical note, some people would argue that form follows parking. I think that there's some truth to it, and I think there's a bit of evidence in this right here. So from the tabulation right here, if I have 27 studios, it's going to tabulate a total parking requirements of 1.25 times 27, right? And then I add all the other ones on a basic overlay zone. I would end up with the requirement of 126 parking spots. And this is not even accurate. There will be accessibility parking, so handicap parking. You would have to provide. You have to provide for motorcycles and bikes and so forth. So we're taking a rough overview of actual, let's say, parking requirements, but this kind of gets you a sense of how this math gets worked out. So 1 bedrooms, right? 1.5, 2 bedroom, 2, and 3 to 4. And you can see that the 5 bedroom, in a way, is probably the most efficient in terms of parking. If you're looking to reduce the parking, the least efficient is probably your 1 bedroom, right? So transit overlay. So this is transit area. These are technically areas designated as having public transportation as a way of offsetting parking requirements. So you can see the actual requirements per unit drops, perhaps not as much, right? And then I think this is the newer one, and I'm yet to look into how much of San Diego has parking standards transit priority area. So that's transit area, but this is priority, no parking requirements. This is something really new. OJ, do you know when this one officially went into effect?
My understanding is that it's been in the last maybe 1.5 to 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we've only seen maybe 2 or 3 projects emerge out of that one, right?
Yeah, I think Jonathan Siegel was the first to tap into it.
Yeah. Sweet. And then, so impact is something else, but the motorcycle and bike, again, this table is for your reference to understand what's going on. The guts all happens here, and it should spit out a number for you if you don't mess with the Excel sheet. Okay, so you can see the link between the two. The square footage is in reference to analyzing your project. We're looking to split or understand the common outdoor space, right? And that's any walkway that gets you 2 units will be common outdoor if more than one person can have access to it or beyond the individual unit. And then the private outdoor, this should total into this. And the net square footage, primarily anything that is what you would deem sort of the interior of a unit. Let's say, yeah, the square footage, that's minus this. Also, you're asked to identify total vertical circulation as a measure, right? So you have your elevators, You also had your staircases, right? So we're looking to like split this stuff into a square footage. So take your cores essentially and measure those. Tabulate that. So should give you a total. The things over here are our metrics. So we're going to be seeing how efficient or how much percentage of the total square footage is designated to outdoor space, right? And that's a qualitative measure. It's not a value. 49, this will be technically a very underutilized building for a developer. This number, right? The higher this number, the more rentable square footage. And then total square footage for circulation you probably want to aim for lower too. I think we use the term of core efficiency, and that's where this sort of gets out. Just giving you a kind of prelude to how we're going to be looking at these as a class or as a studio. So, and then to the actual building, simple calculation, identify the total footprint of the building. And you can see from OJ's discussion that is sort of directly related perhaps to an idea of lot coverage, but it also relates to a potential kind of FAR. And then the building height, right? Try to think we had something, we capped it at 70 feet. So I think most of you are going to fall into that, which is fine. Mine in this case is only 68 and 9 inches. And then here, this is maybe the bit of the scavenger hunt, or maybe a loaded question that I'd like everyone to take on. That says, if let's say this is my building with these parameters, can you within the municipal code find a zone that would allow for this building to happen? It could be multiples, okay? And I'd like to have a conversation about like how you went about this, and also how you would comb through the municipal code to identify that, okay? The other part, maybe just for your reference, is also the actual parking sizes, just to show not only is the number just daunting sometimes, but also the actual square footage a parked car takes up. And that doesn't even include circulation, or let's say driveway, right? So one of these is a small studio, and that's just for the car to be parked. And then, so that's one. That's in reference to your AR 302 project. The other part is, hold on, was there a question? No? Okay, good. Or feel free to chime in. The other is related to the site. Okay, so the site is what you pinned up today. We're borrowing a bit of a worksheet from Tony's office. We took probably the majority out of it, but we felt that these were be good little training runs for you guys to identify the site that you've aerially identified. Would you be able to run through identifying, let's say, the jurisdictions, right? So you could see, is this within the city proper? Is this county? Is this property of the Port Authority? In naval bases, so it's the military. I think you can see that there's different jurisdictions that govern the land that's around us. Would you be able to identify a potential address, right? So the suburbs, right? could be just understood if it's a RS17 or any of the single residences. You can take a typical and use that as your case study. So I think that will be an important kind of clarification on this project altogether. Is, let's say, within your image cropping, and you had, let's say, a commercial zone here, and then you had a bunch of residential butting up. And that's, I would say it's a bit of a judgment call, which zoning designation you want to work into this spreadsheet, right? So is it the commercial one or is it both? And maybe we can, I would advocate, I mean, if it's a clean split like this, why not do both, right? But I think no more than two. But if you're in a single type of zone, do the typical one, yeah. Be able to extract an APN number, and that is kind of give you an example how assessor's parcels map are broken down into. And this has to do with an analog archive of this stuff too. So it's the first 3 digits in reference to the book where it's kept, and what page you would be able to find it within the book, and then within that page, what parcel. So that's the kind of makeup in general. It's the 9 digits, and then this is a finer. This is for condo maps, so where you have multiple things kind of stacked. Base zone, the things that OJ just talked about, and there's also a reference here. It's the same development service zoning that gives you that giant PDF with the color zones, or you can go the QGIS route. Just for fun too, see if you can find and locate if the property or the site is what type of rating, severity. I think this is an increasingly important issue. We're starting to see that the fire season is starting to encroach more and more in the city limits. We also are encountering, even though it feels as if we just really had a wet winter right now, drier months are ahead, and San Diego does dry out. So there's a reason why we rate these things. But when you get into building systems, this also determines wall assemblies and separation and protections. So this is a yes or no question, in my opinion. Site area, again, if you have something of this, this will be the total site. See if you can identify acres, or if you have a single lot, right? We'll be looking at the lot area. So this is a single lot, and this is the actual acres that you're looking at. FAR ratio, right? I think we know this is a combination of knowing what your base zone is, being able to extrapolate a FAR ratio. So that could be anywhere, right? Like that's a factor that you essentially multiply by this, essentially establishes the allowable square footage. Yeah. Lot coverage, that's a percentage. Out of the base zone discussion in chapter 13, you should be able to locate what that is. Permitted use. There's a bit more space for this because you can see that some zones have permitted use for multiple things, or it's a single use. And then to the kind of nuts and bolts of once you have a lot kind of identify, will be to identify what the setbacks are. I don't think front setback 0 feet does not exist, or not that I know, but this is a visual reference. So side street, rear, 10 feet, or it's optional 0. You'll see that once again in chapter 13 when the base zones are discussed. allowable building heights. If you really go into the detail of this, the 30 feet are in most cases made up of the set like planes setting back. So they would establish maybe that the 30 feet is max, but how you get there, right, is OJ's diagram talked about, like you can go a vertical wall in residential zoning to up to like 24 feet right here, and then you have to step it back. But they would say allow like the maximum building height is 30, with the caveat that you do it this way, or you start your building further back, and that's where you could maybe, or they'll come back at you with like offsetting planes, squiggly buildings.
I have a quick
So
question.
yeah,
There's a site area and lot area. I don't understand the difference between.
yeah, good question, and I think I need kind of consensus from the rest of the faculty on how we want to manage or parse this.
Yeah, so basically the site area is your entire site that for example, the images you guys put up today, that would be considered your entire site. The lots are the individual parcels.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So the whole image that we took, we're counting that.
Right.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So here's the thing though, like, so for the coastal ones, right, like that have like jetties coming through, or like, you know, like if this is all land, right, like that will be your site, right? If that's the case, you don't count the water.
Right.
Yeah.
They're not building in the water.
Maybe.
Well, for here, I'd say like, right, like I think and this is an abbreviated exercise to identify what you're looking at and how to locate existing designations.
Yeah.
So it should not be viewed as a say, I'm going to do a due diligence on identifying what can I fit my building on there right now. It's working through understanding these different topics and using your image as a case study. Some of you might have, let's say, a base zone, or like there will be 0 permitted stuff. That's possible.
Yeah.
Some
of them will have that probably.
Yeah.
So what's the option then in those positions where the what we've taken an image of doesn't work for our building after we run through everything? Do we just keep looking for another place?
No. You're gonna have to hold on.
Okay.
So I don't know what will be a good format for question and answer on this. Is it via the chats, or we just have open mic time? When is this due? When is this due?
By 8 o'clock?
What's that?
Is it is there any questions, guys, from while we're in a large group that you might have that will benefit everybody? Do you guys know what gross versus net square footage means?
Well, gross is like everything, and net is like what you can use. Like it doesn't include thicknesses of walls and stuff like that.
And so how do you determine what you can use?
Careful there. We're
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So that was a really good answer when he said the response was inside walls. So that's its own kind. That's a different type of net. That's you get into like rental square footage, like a leasable space. Like it's very, very specific. I would say net in the context of what we're talking about would include exterior walls.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if this is a sketch of some aggregated units, right? So the square footage for your square footage for both the unit gross will be the outer line. Yeah. I forget what the term is for the leasable space. It's a real estate related, which will be minus the walls.
Yeah.
So for us, it's walls included. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you say, Philip, though, where it does have a common wall, would we ask that they split the thickness of the common wall? Are we getting down to that kind of?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
It's the only way to do it, right?
Yeah, that's the only way. So literally, where you have a common, you split the difference into two, like up to here. Yeah.
Now let me ask you this: why are we splitting it? If you have two units, you have two units here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
So this portion of the wall right here is shared by this and this.
Right.
But if it's the same project,
it's the same project.
But I'm doing, like, let's say this is a 1-bedroom.
Oh, you have mixed. You're talking about mixed uses, like okay.
3-bedroom, right? Like if I want the square footage for this versus this.
It's to define unit type. Like you have to list the unit types to get to the parking.
Yeah.
Specifically, the 1-bedrooms that are under 400 square feet or over.
Yeah. I mean, at the total, like when it all adds up, right? Like if you say you do the gross square footage, it literally is everything, like, circulation, like the whole thing, right?
Yeah, it has to all add up.
It all adds up. I mean, like if you calculate one or the other, I'm okay. I mean, we're splitting hairs in a way for something that still moves a lot. So I'm not going to be a stickler about this.
I'm not either. But there is a difference. I mean, it does.
Yeah.
It is a big deal. Like, not in this setting, but they are different. Like, I'm glad that he noticed that.
Yeah.
So here's another thought. Our buildings are pretty much modular, at least I think everybody's is, and which means it's like additive in a sense and scalable. Perhaps like as many modules that we stack together at the end of last quarter doesn't work on the site, but if you break it down a little bit or like break them up or minimize the number of modules, maybe it does work. Are we allowed to play around with that kind of thinking and that like amount of square footage and that kind of I guess factor, you could say?
I'm happy to take a stab at that question. I think it's a good one, but I'm gonna go back to the intent of this particular exercise will be this is an analysis of your project, right? And we're running you through a series of like data points that help understand how buildings get, let's say, measured or what the impacts are. So this is an exercise void of a site. It's giving us an introduction to both zoning primarily, and also a way of measuring your building. The other part, as you can see, is, and it's an addition to this, but separate, and that is, in any form, you should be able to identify a lot and run it through these data points.
Right. That's
So
like the front page of a
they're
permit.
two
So,
different things. I don't want to confuse the things. Yeah.
got it.
But thanks for asking, because I know everyone, like the majority, would want to know that too. So it's productive.
Thank you.
Can we just clarify again, Philip, so I understand even, so on the second part of this worksheet for their sites,
Yeah.
in a way, I mean, again, because we know that their sites are going to have a dozen, 2 dozen, maybe even hundreds of parcels. They're just trying to pick the most typical.
Yeah.
Maybe, you know, if they're lucky, they're all one zone per se. But if not, they're going to make a decision on which zone. Let's say there's 2, 3 different zones, maybe 20, 30 different parcels. Maybe they just pick the most typical and run with that particular parcel.
Yeah, I think that will be. I think so.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
I'd like to. Yeah.
if not, right? I mean, it would be really hard to, like, let's say they do have 100 parcels on their site.
Yeah.
To do 100 different calculations would.
No. Yeah. So like you have, like, let's say this would be a lot, but all these fall into the same zone, right?
Yeah. Right.
Pick one.
Pick one. Right.
Pick one, because this will get you right into like chapter 13.
13.
Right? And if this is another zone right here, right? I mean, I don't think it hurts. Do 2 max.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because if they know the parameters of these 2 zones or these 2 lots, they would just, you know, you could easily draw a, you know, conclusion. There's the possibilities going throughout the rest of those parcels, right?
Yeah. So 2 zones max.
And it may be worth just kind of reiterating kind of the purpose is to just draw a real kind of strong kind of level of awareness to how zoning works in general. Like,
totally.
by using your own project as like a case, like you're kind of intimately aware of the parameters of that, like the kind of dimensions, the scale, the human scale of it. As we worked last quarter on it, you're kind of aware of that. You're aware of how many people kind of fit in that, how many beds, right? How many beds you were able to get into these units. And then when we switch gears and we're kind of enforced a certain kind of like 7 kind of types of features in San Diego County, then when we look at these, we're forced to kind of draw that kind of comparison between the 2, right? We can see the distinct contrast in a lot of cases, and probably in most cases, between what you've built and what exists in terms of the zones that are there. And there we meet the certain kind of the severe kind of limitations or the implications of zoning itself. And the whole point is that you guys learn what these zones are what they look like, what they lend themselves to. As OJ said, from the map we see the shape of them, you know. and how that dictates the urban environment. So this is just an exercise to get your guys' mind wrapped around the concept of zoning. And you'll experience in the office in these different in wherever you end up going, like a lot more complexity around this whole thing. You may be tasked to do some of this stuff right out of the gates. It's not, as you can see, it's not the most kind of glamorous type of work. But that's exactly why we want to teach you kind of how to navigate the waters to get going.
Yeah, again, it may not seem glamorous, but once your mind is in this sort of thinking, your arguments and your positioning for your projects will have so much more strength and
you
know what I mean?
Yep. No, I don't mean to just I don't mean to make it sound like it's not like rendering, you know what I mean, or whatever everybody likes to do. It's
right.
It's something. No,
different. It's not the glitz and the glam. And...
I got a question.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, like.
No, these are beautiful spreadsheets, Philip.
This is the front end. Okay, it's good to talk. This is a good conversation.
I don't know how to take that. The only variable I got to change was the font. Okay. I found my Able Pro again.
We heard a question, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for like where you said the 2-zone max. So what if like the ones that have the golf course, would that be like only like 1 zone, right?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah,
right.
Unless it clips another one, right? So.
Yeah, because on mine, like if I'm gonna draw right here, like the one that I did with the trails, it had that little gap right here. This one right here, right? Where it has the houses, and this one will be like all terrain, pretty much. I think independently it'll be like 1, whereas these 2 are 2 different ones, right? So I'll pretty much just choose this one, right? The big one.
Well, how like how does it go in exercise, right? Like doing more reps gets you in better shape.
Yeah, but then okay.
Yeah, that way you learn both of them. You learn about the implications of both of them.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
I think that's the beauty of zoning is it's the 2 disparate zones that are land uses, right, that are adjacent to one another.
Yeah.
That's the condition I think we want you all to explore, right? Not just be in a field of R1. Even though some of you might have that, but I think this is an interesting condition, right? Is like the canyon or the open space next to suburbia.
Exactly.
And you might have that's your site. You might build a position and say, well, yeah, 80% of it is the green, but maybe my argument is going to be, why isn't that red more dense? You know what I mean? So when you start getting into these zones, you can I don't know. Hopefully, you'll have some critical thought where, by knowing the zone so intimately, you might some new ideas might emerge. I guess.
Okay.
Good question, though.
Yeah. Other questions, guys? While I know there's a lot of detail. We can talk offline on it, but if there's anything else that. I guess maybe where do we begin, right? Like what's the first step? And it seems like using this template here, on this left side, plugging in the unit types, just start plugging it in and doing the research on the on chapter 13, right? Chapter 13 and 14, and start plugging the numbers in, and we'll start to. I don't know. I'm curious how long if this is going to be a really intense week, or if it's going to go fairly quick for some of you. I'm curious.
think we'll have a lot of questions once we start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Well, should we break into our smaller groups or?
Yeah, I think so. I'd like to maybe just cover the broad, but I guess we can loop back into if there's any sort of specific questions that we need to clarify. Maybe the two that I think we want to make sure everyone sort of gets a handle on is the 2 zones. The thing is due on Friday, obviously pushing Wednesday to be a really important kind of review day. Take a solid stab at it, and we can assist with, filling in the spreadsheets here.
Definitely get the scale right on your maps so that your your site is appropriately sized. So it's not too. You're not covering 18 different zones, but
Yeah.
one or two or three.
I'm gonna stop sharing, and to my group, I'm gonna take a 10-minute break, and I'll start the call at 6:40.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Same here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, 10 minutes.
Okay.
See you guys.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
All right.